Welcome everybody to the City Brew Tours Beer Club live stream and podcast. Welcome everybody. It is me, Jonathan. I'm your host once again, coming to you from Brooklyn, New York. And of course, I have a co-host this month, as I always do. And not only is it a good beer drinker that I love to hang out with, but also another beer vendor. Bit of a trend we have here, bringing all the beer vendors in to have some beer together with all of you guys and selfishly with me as well. How's it going, Mike?
Good. Nice to see you, Jonathan. Hello, everyone. It's been a while since I've been in the live streamiverse here at City Brew Tours, but I've never left. I've always been here with y'all.
You're never, what is it? You're always a stone throws away. Is that a
Never not
phrase?
far. Well, I'd like that.
There it is. I don't know all these like new old sayings.
You old sayings.
New old sayings. You're close. You're always close. But we are experiencing a new city, exploring a new city this month. And that's Spokane, Washington, which is great because, Mike, that's on your side of the world. So not too far from you. Well, it is far from you because the West Coast is really big. That's like saying that Vermont's not, well, I guess Vermont isn't that far, but you know, other places aren't far from the East Coast. So we're going to be enjoying some really, really good beers. We have 8 fantastic beers in the box for you guys from 4 fantastic breweries. We will be enjoying 2 of them tonight. We will be enjoying the flavor nuggets from Lumberbeard, and we will also be enjoying the Purple Egyptian from Grain Shed.
Yes.
Before we talk about Spokane and all the fun things, I'm getting thirsty, which I imagine you're getting thirsty. So let's crack open a beer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's crack open that flavor nuggets from Lumberbeard, which I just love their logo. It's literally just a Lumberbeard, but with hops. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Gotta have the beard. You gotta have the hops, of course.
Oh, yeah. It's also popping out of my can, so I gotta be careful with this. All right. This is gonna be classic
And please
New
pour
England.
along with us, folks.
Oh yeah.
My City
I
Brew
know
Tours.
I know we don't have to convince RJ and Jonathan very, very hard. They're always pouring along if they haven't already cracked open this beer. There's some really good beers in this box, so it gets a little hard to wait.
Orangey color here.
Yeah, this looks.
Not reading as much on screen, but
Do the hand. I taught Glenn this last month. Like like all the Instagrammers do. Oh, there you go.
yeah, that's a little better.
Okay.
We're gonna taste it, yeah.
Yeah, let's go for it. Oh, that's juice. That is juice.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, nice
oh,
haze.
nice. Very nice. Hazy. All right, RJ, thank you for pouring along with us. I know it is for some that have been part of the City Brew Tours Beer Club for a while and all the iterations thereof. You may notice that on the pamphlet, there are only 2 featured beers due to the holidays and due to, scheduling over the next few months as well. We will only be doing 1 City Brew Tours Beer Club live stream and podcast each month moving forward, but that doesn't mean that we don't have plenty of things going on. I know we also tonight have a lot of individuals listening and joining on for the Happy Hanukkah that's happening literally right now. So those that are listening to this in the future, we're past that, but we do have the Happy Hanukkah. But for those looking forward, we do have the 12 Beers of Christmas coming up starting on the 25th, actually. There's always confusion about that.
Well, I guess we could say happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays. Happy holidays. But there was a question in there. Who's doing will be with the Yeah. So we will have different people joining on with the 12 beers of Christmas.
RJ
Uh,
will be, yeah, he's saying,
yeah,
okay.
RJ will be there. I will be there a few nights, and some of our other hosts that we've had on the podcast and the live stream, including Tom. Chad might make an appearance. Not sure. We'll see. We'll see who's there. It's going to be a surprise. It's going to be 12 days of just giving. Which, Mike, speaking of Christmas,
Yes,
because I love segues. Uh,
I am in charge of the beer this year.
oh, that's a good one. That's a very important job.
Yeah.
You know how Bing Crosby is like, known for Christmas music because of White Christmas and everything. Did you know he was actually his hometown was Spokane, Washington?
I did not know that. I
Yeah,
did not
it's a
know
fun
that.
time. Yeah, so Spokane's not, Bing Crosby, Christmas,
Mhm.
beer, all kinds of stuff. Spokane also has I always, I'm always doing research on these cities. I didn't know that they had the second largest urban waterfall. I don't know where the first is and what an urban waterfall is. We will have a guest from Spokane, from Grain Shed when we
I
crack
clear all
open
that stuff.
the clear all that up. We'll ask Teddy what's going on with this urban waterfall, because I feel like that's something that we need to kind of investigate. Um, so other couple things, they also have they're not only known for beer. Spokane also has 20 wineries, which
Wow,
is
20.
yeah, which is a lot. Sorry, I'm just drinking this beer. I can't get enough of this beer.
Well, I'm getting that Yosemite Falls is the largest waterfall. It may
Was
not
it
be
the largest
urban.
urban waterfall? That's the question. Well,
The thing is, I only have what's the second largest Google, and it is the one we're speaking of, the Spokane Falls.
oh, so
Spokane.
maybe
Spokane is
Spokane.
what we're saying. Yes.
Spokane. It
We're
is
gonna
very
call
common where people want to say Spokane.
Spokane. Yeah.
It's not. No, no. Think of it as like Worcester. Worcester, Mass. Yeah, it's the same.
Worcester. Actually, I have a glass from Worcester tonight.
Oh, nice.
Actually, no.
It's almost like I know these things.
Yeah, Worcester is spelled Worcester.
Worcester. It's Worcester.
Worcester.
Worcester. Or here in New York, we have Houston Street instead of Houston Street.
We really do. And you have
Yeah.
to. That's like you have to learn that on the first day.
Yeah.
Or you're,
Yeah.
or
You
you're
have to learn it's not Houston, which I grew up in Texas. So I'm like, oh, that's Houston. And everyone's like, no, 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 that's Houston Street.
I
But
remember my first
apparently,
day. Oh, sorry. My first day in
no.
New York was I went to school and it was right at Houston and Broadway. So luckily
Oh,
I was
nice.
away.
So you figure that out pretty quickly.
Yeah. I went
Apparently
to
that was just that was from a misspelling, like a typo, that it was supposed to be Houston, which was Houston,
Houston. Yeah.
but they took the second U off by accident. They typoed, so now it's
I've
still
never heard
Houston.
that.
Yeah, yeah. See, the more you know. And we're not even
You
this
are
has
an
nothing to
urban
do.
waterfall of knowledge, sir.
Yes, uh oh, Houston County, Georgia is also pronounced like the street. So it's also Houston. So there you go. See, the more you know. Are
Mhm.
there so Mike, you're not too far from Spokane. I mean, you are far, but have you ventured up there? Have you learned anything interesting about Spokane, Washington?
Yes, I'm in a place called Fresno, California, for the record. Formerly lived in New York City for a long time, but it's actually 986 miles north. So
That's not that. That's
not a
not that
thousand.
bad.
It's drivable.
Anything less than 1,000, is that
Yeah,
drivable? Is that
exactly.
your
It's like, oh, it's gonna take too long.
1,000? So, but anything under, so 999, that's
Yeah.
fair game, but
So
a
yeah,
thousand's
after
too far.
this, well, Spokane is the lilac city. If you didn't know that,
I did not know that. So they
that's
just
right.
have a lot of lilacs.
That's my presumption.
Hmm. I mean, it's a beautiful flower. It smells nice. Um,
It's a
I
great
don't.
beer town. Lots of breweries. One of the beers we have in our box today, the No Lie. If you guys take a look at that, it's considered the first craft brewery in Spokane.
Really? What year did were they
I just have to continue to think about.
investigate and think about it? We can also go. I we're gonna have an expert here in a minute that will be
Yeah,
able
I'm
to
gonna
answer
think on
all of
that
this
one.
question. But for anyone that hasn't been to Spokane, we are featuring some very, very good beers. So we do have Grain Shed, which we will have here in
Mm.
just a few minutes. And Spokane is known for having sustainability and being a very sustainable town. And so Grain Shed, which is a highly sustainable company and brewery, of course we had to feature them, and then No Lie being the first as well. And then of course we got those fun ones from Lumberbeard and our other friends over at Iron Goat, throwing in some really, really fun beers in there. If anyone has tried any of the beers, let us know in the chat.
Oh,
Also let us know in the comments on which beers out of the box you are enjoying. I know it's really, really hard to wait, and so I'm sure hopefully everyone waited on the two that we're having tonight. But if you didn't, let us
very sure
know.
what they like and tell us.
Have
Yeah,
you have
actually,
you snuck in any of them, Mike?
yeah, I just remembered lo-fi no-fi brewing is actually they started in 1993. So
Oh,
that's
that's a good start. Yeah.
been around for a while. Yeah, so they really
So
are.
that's right around the start of, major craft brewing in the United States. So they were 93. Then
The
you
first
have
wave. If you-
Yeah, first wave, because then you have right around that time. Anchor would have been around that time, right? Right around then.
Yep, St.
Um,
Adams was earlier than that, and
and then
one
Brooklyn
of
would
the
have been 96. So right around there as well. So
yeah.
really the beginning, I mean, and of course it makes sense in Washington and on the upper West Coast, having all of that access to all those hops.
Yeah.
And that's really where they all are growing now and were growing then, ever since the 1800s, when New York kind of lost all their hop fields in the 1880s. So everything was growing in the Yakima Valley, which we have featured Yakima before. And of course, you have to get all your hops there. So that makes sense that, especially even though we're drinking a West Coast brewery, we're having a New England IPA, which seems a little it seems a little off.
They ain't growing
But
those hops in Western Massachusetts. I'll tell you that.
no, 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 no. I mean, you can get some of these hops over in you get some of them in New York, but with these ones specific,
Well, if you're going to get hops in the United States, it's upwards of 95% of all hops
which
are
is insane.
from the three states, but of Idaho and Oregon and Washington, but mostly Washington.
Mostly Washington, yeah. And mostly that one valley, which
Yeah,
is
the Yakima Valley.
insane. Yeah, yeah. But it's always fun because I'm really bad at geography, and I know it's all on the same latitude. And then I'm like, is that actually Germany? And it is. It is,
Mhm.
but it doesn't make sense to me. Because I don't
Right.
think Washington and Germany is in the same climate, but they obviously are. Let me see. Some of our guests are drinking some of the other beers from the box as well. The Sonora Wheat from Grain Shed as well. And of course,
Those are
we're gonna be having that Purple Egyptian here in just a second because Mike, I'm already getting through this beer very quickly.
Where'd it go?
I honestly have no idea where it's going right now. It's going way too quickly. Um, what's your favorite hop? Because like when you have a hazy like this, obviously you're getting mostly the aromas, mostly
Mm.
the citrus, just because you're not boiling as long, so you get those nice aromatics. But is there a hop that you prefer?
I do like Citra. It's kind of
Yeah,
old school.
that's good.
I mean, it's not like when I say old school, I mean like, oh, that's so 2009 or whatever. Like, It's not that long ago that Citra was popular. I used to get beers from Burlington Beer Company. Shout out to Burlington in Vermont.
Yep.
Um, and they used to do a single hop series, and their single hop series was fantastic. And so I used to drink the Mosaic they had. They had a Citra, and they would go through each of the hops. Mithra was another one,
Oh, that's a good one.
and just I love a beer that showcases one hop, so you can really get to know it.
Mhm.
Like not that I don't like blends, which most of them are, especially the uh, New England style IPAs. You do see a lot of blends of hops, and the West Coast you see some of the more traditional ones.
Mm.
There you go. RJ's got it here. Citra, Motueka, and El Dorado.
Ooh, yeah.
So that's that same thing about Southern Hemisphere. I think Motueka is a Australian or New Zealand,
New Zealand, I believe. Yeah.
and they have that same geographical area of the world where they can grow hops.
Well, even Guatemala can grow hops. It's not common, but there are a few Guatemalan hops that are really, really great. Just even though they're outside of that latitude, the
Mm.
climate is just right that it's very, very similar up in the mountains that you get. I don't remember the name of them, but I know I have had them. Um, I'll remember in a minute. I know I'll
Get at
remember.
one of those Guatemalan beers now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, you can get some really, really good hops even from like the Southern Hemisphere. One, New Zealand has fantastic hops. You have the Matuka, you have the Waimea hops, even not Rock, the Rockatao, or because there's two that start with R, and I always get them
Oh, Rawaka is one that I really like.
Rawaka and then Rakatau. I think it's
Yeah.
Rakatau, which is Rakatau. That's actually I believe that one's also from New Zealand as well. They're
Yeah, I had a
fun.
single hop beer from Other Half Brewing in old Brooklyn town, and it tasted like straight cantaloupe. I mean, it was wild. I couldn't believe it.
There's, you know what? Teddy's
A
helping
beer
us, and
expert weighing in here. That's good.
you know what? I'm
Yeah,
gonna
that's-
I'm gonna get Teddy in here. Teddy is the brewer over at Grain Shed, and I might as well. We're gonna bring him in. We're gonna bring Teddy in. We're gonna have Teddy help us out with these hops and introduce our beer as well.
Welcome.
Welcome,
Hello,
Teddy. There you go. Rakau, not Rakatao.
Raquel. Yep, Raquel
Rakau.
and Rawaka. Rawaka is, man, you gotta pay out the nose to get some Rawaka. It's you can't get it. Most people can't get it because it is such a hard to grow beer or hard to grow hop, and
Or
it's
is it
just a
just a
wild.
hard, it just doesn't like to
It doesn't
grow?
grow super well. It's a
Oh,
fairly a brewer and pouring a terrible pour right now, so nobody watch that.
Oh, I was gonna
Um,
say, you're listening to us talking about, you're like, well, these guys are beer experts.
Oh
these
no, you
guys.
guys are crushing it. You guys are crushing it.
Yeah,
I love
yeah,
it.
yeah.
I love it. Yeah, Rawaka, extremely expensive, extremely good. But yeah, it is not an easy to grow hop by any means. So it's very limited um, in its quantities. And down in New Zealand.
Not down in New
Mhm.
Zealand. There you
Yeah.
go. See, I'm really
Yeah.
bad with geography. I'm like, New Zealand, is that down or is that up? I mean, I want to
You
say
know,
down. I always want to
it's
say
all
down.
perspective.
Oh,
It's all
It is.
perspective.
It's a globe. Well, hopefully we have no, it's not flat. It's a globe. On that note, let's crack open that second beer. Teddy already was pouring his. I'm cracking open mine, and is just like the other one, is jumping right out. We are jumping in because I actually did just crush that first one, which is probably a bad decision, but also a good decision. But this is the Purple Egyptian. Teddy, why don't you just, while we have you, since you brewed this beer,
I
what
did.
are some of the notes that we're looking for on this one?
So this is going to be a pretty straightforward beer as far as recipe and everything like that. You're no aroma or dry hopping or anything like that. Only enough bittering hops with Columbus just to like cut sweetness and make it palatable. But it's going to be really clean, and it's going to have a lot of. I to me, I get a lot of grape nuts and dried apricots. So a lot of dried fruit, dried apricots specifically, and grape nuts. You know, that delicious breakfast cereal, which is the purple Egyptian barley that is the focal ingredient of this beer. So you get some nice bread and like crackers and things like that, but nice, super clean, simple beer.
Wow. I don't know.
Cheers.
I mean, maybe simple, but I mean it's that complex flavor though. Mm,
Sometimes
It
it's the
has a lot
simplest
going on.
ones.
a lot
Yeah.
going on here. I definitely get the grape and
Hmm.
the dark fruit. I get that on the nose as
Mm.
well. The taste is just delightful.
Yeah, it's a
Very
pretty
smooth.
special beer. It's pretty unique. It's pretty different. So the story behind this beer and the kind of reason that it is what it is. So we are a cooperative, the Grain Shed is, and we are a
Mhm.
farmer worker cooperative. So one of our founding members with me is a farmer named Don Shireman that grows purple Egyptian barley, which is this it's called a land raced grain,
Mhm.
which means that it develops characteristics based off of where it's grown. So that grain is purple Egyptian barley. It actually grows purple in the field, like blackish purple when it gets through its main growing phase and they start to dry, like most grains that are grown do. It actually looks like the field's been burned out. It's pretty amazing. It changes to this dark purple black color. So it's black in color out of the field. And this is very, very simple. It's kind of a unique grain. It is it's called a self-threshing grain. So kind of like normal wheats, the husk will just kind of come off on its own, which is a little bit different. And it just has these crazy flavors, tons and tons of fruit, really a little bit different than what you'd normally expect from just your standard barleys or wheats and everything like that. Has a lot of flavor, which is really unique, and why we designed this to be just a very clean, very simple beer. Let these grains kind of just highlight what they are, because this is not a thing that you get everywhere, by any means. So
No, yeah. No, it is. No, it is very simple, but sometimes that's what you need, right? Just
yeah,
something
yeah,
very nice, very simple. You are showcasing the flavors of that grain, which I think is fantastic. And I do get that grape nuts, and it's always hard because I grew up eating grape nuts a lot
yeah,
because that
yeah,
was I had a lot of grandparents and that's what they
yeah,
had.
absolutely.
And so anytime I have a beer that I'm like, oh, grape nuts, and everyone's like looking at me weird. I'm like, no,
Yep,
but that's
that's
barley, like it's
yeah,
what it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Or sometimes if you get a beer that has like the same flavors as Smacks or like
yeah.
golden what's the other
Golden
one?
Graham or
Golden Grams, Golden
hops.
Crisp, Pops, Golden Crisp,
Yeah,
Pops, Smacks,
yeah,
all
Pop.
those.
Yeah.
Because those are all like either malted barley or have malted barley flavor to them. And so you get like that caramely and all. So I always like bringing those up. I'm like, oh yeah, that brings me to that nostalgia of that
totally.
cereal. But my question is about the purple, like the Egyptian purple grain. If
Yeah,
it brings on the flavors from like the ground and from the nutrients, um, does it, if when you brew this from batch to batch, does it taste different from
yes,
season to
yeah,
season? Yeah.
yeah. And there a lot of like thinking about commodity brewing and things like that. The goal is consistency, right? You Budweiser is supposed to taste now the same now that it did 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
We don't care about that.
Yeah.
As long as we are consistently creating a product that is high quality and things like that, having variation in flavors because of environmental and growing conditions, that's great. We think that's the coolest thing in the whole wide world. Like terroir and wine is a really big deal.
Mhm.
Beer is just as much an agricultural product as wine is, right? So we very much want that to be kind of a focal point. So actually, and let's see if does it have it. Yeah, so on your can it will actually say down there 2021 harvest. So we do
Right.
denote when we can this beer what year, what crop year the barley was from, because 2021 in the Palouse was different than 2015 in the Palouse, when it was
Yeah.
huge, huge, huge hot fires, terrible
Hmm.
end of days sort of deal. So we get a different product when we have different crop years. And so the other piece with us, we are a 100%, pretty much 100% craft malt. based brewery. So instead of buying things from Brees and Great Western and Gambrinus and Wehrman and things like that, we are using a local malt house for
Oh, cool.
pretty much 100% of what we use that isn't roasted. Our malt house doesn't have a roaster. So everything base grain, everything, you know, even through caramel malts, pretty much is from Link Malt in the Spokane Valley. So we also have that as a little piece of variation too. Would they get some differences batch to batch? We get some differences from crop year to crop year and things like that. You know, I'm always kind of tweaking things a little bit too. But yeah, we definitely do get variation from year to year, and growing seasons has a huge impact on it.
Yeah, of course. Having grown up, I grew up in the Midwest. I actually grew up in Indiana, and with that, corn is like that's what they grow. Corn, but then they also switch every other year with soybeans to help with the nutrients. But that's all about creating that consistent flavor, the consistent product. And so knowing that how that works with barley and other grains, and you guys are just like, we're just going to go with it and just kind of accept that fate of what's happening each season. Also living here in New York, apples change from year to year. Sometimes they're really good, sometimes not so good, depends
Not
on
so
the
much.
rain. Yeah. So and like obviously you see that with cider. But I think that's one thing that a lot of even craft breweries, because they get grains from those, you know, sometimes it's hard to get grains and sometimes it's hard. You want to brew a specific style and the specific just a specific beer as a home brewer, you know, I get specific stuff for specific styles as I'm doing it. And but when you're just like, we're gonna get this locally from, you know, this one farm from this one maltster and whatever they have, that's what we get. I think that's amazing. Obviously that does create not consistency issues, but does create those kind of fun fluctuations. So my
Variation.
variations. So my question is, as a brewer, how do you personally kind of adjust to these variations? Because sometimes you may not know till late in the brew process as to how these grains are reacting or interacting with your ingredients. So is there something you look for before, you know, in each phase, or do you just go with it?
Yeah, so specifically, you know, our farmer Don that grows the purple Egyptian, he grows a couple of other grains. So actually, purple Egyptian is about 60% purple Egyptian and 40% of a barley called Scots Bear. Because purple is a self-threshing grain, it doesn't have those husks that you need in the brewing process, or as many of those husks as you need. Scots Bear does. Scots Bear is another really cool landrace grain. He also has Sonora, which you guys have in your boxes. Is a really fantastic white wheat. He also has a red wheat called Red Russian. That they are all different and they all interact differently and grow differently. And we then have to make adjustments year to year, and or at least when we have new batches from different crop years coming through, and generally what I will do is just kind of run my normal recipe. We get what we get, and then knowing that with subsequent batches we adjust as we need, and see where we're at. If we need big changes, we make big changes. If it's just small tweaks, we make small tweaks. The biggest things that we generally run into though are with these specific grains, with the land race grains, are differences in extract. So sometimes you know, they are not the sexy race car of grains. They are, you know, the really old, nice classic cars that are really cool to look at, but they don't go very fast and aren't big performance things. So we generally have to use higher quantities of them per batch than we would with more traditional grains. So that being said, we generally just run what our normal recipe would be for a batch, and then we may come in, you know, 0.5% of alcohol lower, or sometimes 0.5% of alcohol higher, and things like that. So, you know, when we're doing things in cans, it makes it a little bit more challenging because we generally will hold off on creating labels until we can confirm what our alcohol contents are, because we do have some legal requirements for being within a range. So that's one piece that we do interact with. But really, for the most part, it's just kind of we get what we get, and kind of love that piece of it with these grains. The other grains that we use that are more standard barleys and wheats, we run into fewer variations with. We definitely do still get some year-to-year differences based on, but it's much less. We run into some things with very dramatic different crop years as far as weather goes. Spokane in our area, specifically the Palouse where all of this grain is grown, over the last 10-ish years has been experiencing huge portions of fires. Hot summers, tons and tons of fires in the Palouse, in the forests around us and things like that. So with that, we do actually run into some issues, just as the hop growers do, right? There are, Oregon has had some pretty bad hop harvests over the last 5-6 years because they've had smoked out hop yards that they just can't use. So we do have some things occasionally. If we do get, a couple of years ago, we had a summer where we had 10 straight days over 100 degrees. Some of them, most of them were over 110 degrees. Like, it was really, really difficult. And we had really, really low yield harvests that year. So that was one where we all of us that are using a lot of these craft malts had to, like, okay, we're going to change from genie barley to buzz barley partway through and make some adjustments there and whatnot. But for the most part, those are a little bit more stable as far as what we get. The nice part is our malt house does do analytics on every single batch of malt that they run, so we are able to see okay, what is the lab-based extracts that they're getting, the protein contents, the diastatic powers and things like that. So we're able to get a lot of information just off of data sheets, which is helpful. It doesn't always transition and translate to what we're doing, but it does help.
That's awesome.
A great answer.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Probably a lot more long-winded than any of our guests were expecting, but
sorry guys.
No. This is why we're all here.
Listen, we have guests on that you ask a question like that, they go, "Oh yeah, that's true."
Yep. No, that's great. No, we love these answers. No, that's, yeah, I mean, that all makes sense. And what is the size of your brew house?
So we are a 10-barrel brew house.
Okay.
10 barrels. And yeah, so we have 3 fermenters, 6 bright tanks. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Kind of, so we are in a fairly famous building in Spokane, called the Steam Plant. So downtown, it was truly an old steam plant. So if you look up photos of Spokane, you'll almost always see the steam plant. 2 giant smokestacks go about probably 400 feet in the air, maybe not quite that big, maybe 300 feet in the air. They're large. You always see the steam plant. So, God, I think that this brewery was put into the steam plant maybe 20 years ago, maybe not quite that long. And at the time of COVID, the company that owned the building decided to sell it, liquidated all. The brewery that was there was no more, and we're like, hey, we would love to lease that brewery and that space from you. So we've been there now for about 3 years. Actually, maybe just 2 years, 2.5. So we're there. We've been there for a while now, brewing, and learning a new system is always fun. But that's been a nice home for us. So
yeah, I was just looking at the photo of it. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's a pretty beautiful place.
And I know that Grain Shed is not just a brewery, that you guys are also a bakery, and basically however you can use grains, you guys use them. So how does that cross translate? Like, how much of the grain that you guys use for brewing goes to baking and vice versa? Or do you guys just keep it separate and do your own thing and still just like source it all sustainably as possible?
Yeah, so I mean, sustainability is a big portion of what we do in general. We are a B Corp. And so a big portion of our B Corp certification is sustainable sourcing and things like that. So bakery and brewery, bakers don't use a ton of barley. Granted, our bakers use a lot of purple Egyptian barley. Actually, it's a fantastic food barley. And so they use it sometimes raw or sometimes unmalted, but they actually use majority malted. So that's kind of a nice thing. So what you're drinking, we use in a bread that is our most popular bread. We have brownies that are 100% purple Egyptian barley. Like, it makes it into a decent bit of baked goods. But we do have, we as brewers use a decent bit of wheat as well. So our We use a lot of the red Russian wheat that our bakers use, a lot of the Sonora wheat that our bakers use. We both use a spelt called Elwha River Spelt that was developed down at WSU in Pullman, Washington, so just about 60 miles south of us. And so we do have a lot of transition and crossover there. You know, a lot of people when we opened, and still we have people like, oh, do you guys use the spent grain for your baking? You know, make spent grain bread? And like, no, if we do our jobs as brewers, the spent grain is terrible, and it's great for feed for animals and fertilizer, but there's no sugars left, there's no flavor left. It's just fiber and cellulose.
Don't tell the animals.
Yeah, right. But the animals love it, so it's great.
Yeah.
And so we have a farmer that comes and picks up all our spent grain. He feeds it to his chickens and his pigs and uses it as a fertilizer. It's great. But yeah, so our bakery does use majority locally grown grains. Actually, a big portion. And we actually stone mill a good portion of our own flour as well. Probably about 80% of the flour that we use. We have a giant 39-inch or 42-inch, I can't remember, stone mill. From actually talking about Vermont, new American stone mills out in Vermont that made it. We've had it now for 5-6 years. Well, probably actually longer than that because it was before we opened. So yeah, so a lot of shared ingredients, not shared space. When we did open, we actually had our brewery. We were brewing off of a 10-gallon Sabco system, like Dogfish had started with as well. Quickly upgraded that to their 1.5 barrel system, and that lasted for like 4 brews at our bakery before we were like, this cannot continue. This thing produces too much heat for this small space. It's just not functional. Went shared some space with another brewery friend in town, and now yeah, we're kind of just separated out as far as space goes. But yeah, we're a bakery that does all of our breads come out of a wood-fired oven, which is kind of another different thing that we have going for us, all long fermented sourdoughs and things like that. But we share a lot of things. We have a restaurant now up in North Spokane. We have all the stuff. We have a tap room downtown as well. So we're just kind of working on growing slowly.
And I'll let you take a sip for dramatic pause because you've been talking a lot. So yeah, with you guys have a tap room, you've gotten this new space that's much larger, you got the bakery. And so as the brewery, obviously you guys are growing, you're trying to utilize as many local ingredients and just continue to keep that sustainability, but also, keeping it local, fresh, best quality. I mean, I can attest by this beer that I'm having, it's very, very crisp, clean. You taste that purple Egyptian grain, you taste the sweetness. Like, you don't have to get, even though I'm loving the IPA that we had earlier, that's like lots of hops, lots of flavor, everything. And then this is complete opposite, which is what I love about it. Is just it's so nice, sweet, refreshing, crisp, but still a lot of complexity. So I'm assuming you have the background in brewing. Kind of, how did you get involved with Grain Shed, or did you just one day wake up, I'm just going to start brewing and start with Grain Shed? Kind of what's been your journey through this? Has it always been in Spokane, or kind of how has this progressed to where it is now?
Yeah, I am a Spokane native, so was born and raised here, spent some time in Seattle and things like that, but have been back now for a long time. No, so my brother-in-law and I, and he's one of the other founders of the Grain Shed with me, and we started homebrewing in 2009, 2010 maybe. Homebrewed for a lot of years, really enjoyed that, and then my brother-in-law started a local food distribution cooperative, and they looked to add a value-added piece in the off seasons, and they wanted to do malting. So he went to malting school, started the malt house, and when we started brewing with that, we're like, oh, this is really good. Like this is a whole different aspect to brewing. We should look at doing this professionally. So I was working as an elementary school teacher at the time, we met our baker Sean and our farmer Don at about the same time. Sean was working to start his own bakery. Don was looking to have a brewery with his grains, and he had no idea how to brew. Like, great, let's do this together, run it all as one business. Started that. We started the grain shed in 2018. Like I said, we were originally on a 10-gallon system, brewing, as much as we possibly could to try and keep up, and still only have 3 beers on it most at a time before we got our slightly larger system. And just kind of went from there. I have no formal education in brewing, just, a lot of reading and trial and error, mess up a lot of beer and go from there. But I've now been fully doing this full time for about 4 years. I've been, brewing, but also doing a lot of other just general business managerial things. But yeah, a lot of brewing. So yeah, I mean, it's just truly a lot of trial and error, and looking back at my recipes from 4 years ago, it's a much different game now than it was then, and definitely making better beer now than I was then. But this recipe has actually been pretty stationary for a while. This was a pretty early find that we absolutely loved, because it just highlights what the beer is, or what the grain is, and kind of let that go from there.
I love that
That,
constantly, that you're continuing to improve. I love that for breweries, 'cause sometimes a brewery, does the same thing over, for years, and then they go out of fashion. So I mean, always
Totally.
trying things and improving things. I love that. You mind? I was going to ask if when y'all did start out, was it because you're the grain shed? We're talking about grain forward beers a lot. A lot of the see your list. I mean,
Yeah.
the hop in the hop craze, especially being in Washington, was it purposeful to sort of go in the other direction, more malt forward beers, or did that just happen because of what you were growing and who you guys are?
Yeah, that's kind of the way, at least it started. Was, I mean, we really didn't brew an IPA or even a pale for probably a year and a half. Our main focus was truly just, we're looking to highlight these unique grains. And now our access to these, unique locally grown grains is a lot simpler, which is really great. It's a lot bigger. We have more variety. We also have more easy to use local grains, which is great. The purple Egyptian's wonderful. The flavor is fantastic. Isn't an easy grain to work with. Purple's about as easy as they come as far as these grains go. The other 3 are much more temperamental. So now we have some easier to handle malts, which is great. But yeah, our big focus originally was like, well, so a lot of people don't know the Palouse, which is an area south of Spokane and a little bit west of Spokane. It's the most productive grain growing region per acre, and I believe the country, if not the world. And something like 93% of the grain grown in the Palouse is exported to Asia,
oh, wow.
specifically for noodles, and some other things. Pretty wild. Noodles, cake, some distilling, pretty wild. So much of it goes overseas, and we're like, this is dumb. We really can't access things from local farms that we know. We can go down to the farms, we can talk to them, but we can't use it because grain has to be malted. And the closest malt house at the time was Great Western. And they're like, we're not touching it unless we can do I think it was like 60-ton batches at the time. And our farms are like, well, I have a 5-acre farm. Like, I don't grow that much in 6 years. I don't know what to do with that. So we're like, okay, well, when the malt house started, it made it a lot simpler. That being said, we also, because of just generally what we were doing at that time, we were not as focused on doing hop forward things, because we weren't able to work directly with hop farms. We weren't able to, at that time, we weren't able to do what we wanted to with hops that we were doing with grain. I couldn't go and shake my farmer's hand and say, hey, I want this. That's since changed. And you can look, I mean, I think our tap room right now has 8 or 9 hop forward beers, out of, it's a pretty decent portion. But that's because we have a really great relationship with a hop farm in Yakima called Roy Farms. They grow some absolutely phenomenal hops. I mean, everything that you could really ever want as far as hops go. And so we, last 3 years have been working with them. So almost I mean, if it doesn't grown in Europe or the Southern Hemisphere at this point, we get our hops from Roy, which is really wonderful. So Andy Roy is our sales guy that we work with, and so I'm able to call him up, email him several times. We contract out our year's hops from him. We get our fresh hops from him when we do fresh hops. And it's pretty phenomenal. They have all of the same ethics that we look for in our grain farmers and what we're looking for there. I mean, they're a B Corp certified um, farm as well. They grow a huge amount of organic hops for Yakima Chief and things like that. So I mean, they do what we are looking for and are like-minded and fairly priced, and their hops are phenomenal. So once we recognize that, oh, we can get single origin hops, we have done a lot more there. But it is, I mean, that's a big focus for us. Is I want to be able to know exactly where all of my ingredients are coming from. So
That is amazing. The fact that you're doing single origin hops, single origin malts, like that doesn't happen really anywhere else. Um, and if it does, it's usually like a home brewer, which is your background, but they're like
yeah,
traveling around trying to get it and like haggling and everything. But
totally.
the fact that you're able to do that and still do it at volume and with multiple beers and styles, and I think it's hats off to you because that's amazing. I had
Congratulations.
two questions for you though. One was, what's the hardest grain you've ever worked with?
So the second grain in this is a grain. Well, okay, there are two answers. The second grain in this is a grain called Scots Bear. Got this crazy heritage. It was grown by Thomas Jefferson and George Washington. It's just this like has heritage coming out its nose. It's wonderful. Flavors phenomenal. It really they yeah, our farmer grows it. It's grown in the Palouse on his farm and on the Orkney Islands off of Scotland, and it is an enormous pain to work with. In fact, I'm dumping a beer probably next week with it because it just didn't perform. It just didn't do what it was supposed to do, and who knows why. But it's tiny. It's really really
Mm.
small, which makes milling it really difficult. Um, and it's really difficult. The other one is another one is actually the Sonora, which the batch of Sonora that everybody got is really great. Absolutely love it. Belgian wood isn't always my style, but this turned out so well. That grain is another one that just plagues me and is so hard to work with. It has a just as a wheats sometimes have a tendency to throw oxygen during fermentation and things like that. And oxygen is the absolute devil in finished beer. And so we've had a lot of oxidized Sonora in our lives, which is really, really frustrating. And it's a really great grain other than that. Like it's got great flavor. It's a moderately simple one to use. It isn't as technically difficult as the Scots Bear, but those are the two that are my most challenging ones. For the most part, the other stuff that we use is pretty simple.
Yeah, I was figuring that one of the wheats would be involved in there because they're always I've I'm
Yes.
yet as a home brewer, I only do like, a few gallons at a time. But I'm still like, do I want to do wheat? Because it's so temperamental at times. But that
Yeah,
makes
and it is
all those.
even at the large scale, it's a
Yeah,
pain.
yeah.
It's a huge pain. And I mean, we still to I mean, we've I've been doing this for a while now and still are trying to figure out, okay, how do I adjust the challenges that I have with wheats and spelts and things like that to make it a more functional thing for me to brew with. And it's, I mean, dumping 30 pounds of rice hulls in a batch to be able to, make a high wheat portion hazy IPA or whatever it is, because it just stops, smashes, and makes it really challenging. So,
Completely understand. I also do some gluten-free brewing because my wife has celiacs, and so I understand like
yes.
adding those extra holes and not getting the sugars. Which actually leads into my second question. If Spokane's doing so much exporting, especially for noodles, do you guys ever work with buckwheat? And have you? And how did that work out for you?
I have never actually worked with buckwheat. for a variety. I mean, we,
Yeah.
you know, are not a gluten-free brewery and we never will be able to be. But that being said, it is, I know a couple of gluten-free brewers. Ghost Fish is a pretty large gluten-free brewery in Seattle, that they use some buckwheat and things like that. And I know it's challenging. I think their main grains that they use are uh, brown rice, malted brown rice, malted millet is the other big one that they use. But I do believe that they use some buckwheat. And I think buckwheat is a challenging one. But it's got really unique flavors and things like that. The actual thing that we've used buckwheat associated things with more, one of our friend breweries in town, they brew a lot of braggots, which are beers,
Oh, yeah.
like kind of a beer meat hybrid, and buckwheat honey is absolutely phenomenal. It is super dark. It's got these like crazy like molasses and like almost dank flavors to it, and it's just like it's wild. It's really really unique and delicious. So we have used buckwheat honey several times, and it's pretty phenomenal. Um, but actual buckwheat we've never used.
I was just curious. That was more of a personal question
Oh
that
yeah,
wasn't
oh
in
yeah,
the chat, because just with, especially with noodles, that's a huge part
yeah,
of going into that's what udon noodles
yeah, yep.
go into there. So I was just curious because I'm imagine there's a lot of exportation. And have you guys ever done a kvass?
Yes. So actually, when we first started, then we were brewing on a small system. Um, did a lot of them. We called them the wasted loaf,
Yeah.
because we had, making sandwiches and toast slices and things like that at our bakery. We'd have, tons of, heels and things like that. Great. Toss them in a bucket. Made, I think, 15, 16 of them on a small scale, which was really fun and would just do something like totally off the wall and weird and different every single time. And it was really, really fun. And I haven't done one in a very long time because doing a 10 barrel batch, A, will take forever to sell, and B, I just don't have the amount of bread that it would take. Like, we sell all of our bread. I can't have them bake bread that I just toss into a beer. But yes, we would do it all the time and absolutely love doing it. I miss doing it because it was just something totally different. And it's the flavor. And we would do it with barley as well, or barleys and wheats and things too, just like get it above like 0.5% alcohol. But be like 2.5 to 3.5% ABV, and get that nice like sour piece. And we sometimes toast the bread a little bit beforehand to like get a little bit more nuttiness and things like that. It's really really interesting and really delicious.
I always love a good kvass, and I figured, well, you guys are a bakery and a brewery. It has to have had happened.
Oh yes,
But I've also doing it at scale is not always
yeah,
most convenient. We
yeah.
did have a question in the chat a little bit earlier. Um, I know you guys are mostly sourcing locally. Are you guys only distributing locally, or are you also in other parts of the country yet?
No, we
Or
are purely local.
okay.
Now that isn't to say that that won't change at some point, but we really are. We are a pretty small brewery. This year, I think we'll just hit 300 barrels. So really not a large operation by any means. Um, at some point, potentially. Right now, it's just in Spokane. We're just self-distributing. The other challenge with what we do, that makes it a little bit more challenging, is that our grains and our ingredients costs are significantly higher than most breweries. Um, for our more traditional things, that's changing a little bit. More commodity malts, are the prices have just gone through the roof as well. But when we started, I mean, it was normal commodity grain was, commodity pilsner was, if you were buying large volumes, was 20 to 25 cents a pound. Um, and at that time, we were spending $1 to $1.30 a pound. So we were looking at 4 to 5 to 6 times the price. Now commodity pilsner and things like that are up to like 60, 65 cents, and we pay about 85 cents for our more standard grains that we use. So it's not crazy different now. But it's, yeah, definitely a little bit of a limiting factor. We cannot afford to work with the distributor at this point in time, but as things goes, that might change.
Well, and also if you're sourcing locally, the farms can only produce so much. And
Totally.
as you mentioned, they're not producing the 60,000 pounds or whatever,
Yep.
they're like, I got 5 acres.
Yep.
That's all I got.
Totally.
and they can only do that certain times of the year. So that makes perfect sense. I know we're getting close to our time. I do always want to make sure that anyone on the live stream does have a chance to ask any of their questions. I think we're answering everything. Mike, did you have anything? Teddy's just like giving us all kinds of knowledge, which I love.
No, I mean, it really is great stuff. And we're getting a lot of comments in our small group here. We're getting a lot of comments for the Sonora wheat, that it's very special. Jonathan was just saying, or was it RJ? Is there something? There's something about the Sonora I don't think I've ever had before. Just the way it drank was a special experience.
It's a Belgian wheat, so it was Belgian wheat beer. So it Sonora's the focal wheat in it. High portion, so it's got kind of that weedy chewiness, which is really nice. And in true Belgian wit style, it has bitter orange peel and coriander, and a pretty hefty dose. And yeah, has some really great citrus to it. Has that Belgian wit yeast, like phenolic yeast piece to it as well, which isn't normally my jam, but that beer turned out really, really well.
Right on.
Nice.
The
I
beers
always love a good Belgian wit. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea because it can be a little, especially wheat as a whole, is just a weird. It sits weird on everyone's palate. But no, I know I have it. I've been eyeing it and I've been avoiding it, not avoiding it, saving it, just for a good time.
I'm looking
Yeah, no, it'll probably crack open here soon.
Wait, no, I was gonna ask. Yeah, I mean, how is you have a good fan base going for Grain Shed? Yes.
Yeah, we do have a pretty decent following. Our beer for sure. Bakery is a pretty amazing following.
A big draw.
It really is. Our bread is. I'll be perfectly honest. It's the best bread I've had in the country. I mean, it is absolutely phenomenal.
Even just the photographs, I'm like, I gotta have this bread.
I take all the pictures. I've got that going for me. I bought a camera when we opened and learned some things along the way. But no, I mean our baker is an absolutely incredible food mind. He comes from a pretty deep pedigree in the culinary world. But the transition to baking about a decade ago and is just, we call him Bread Jesus. He looks kind of like Bread Jesus. And just knows so much and just makes the absolute best bread that you could ever ask for. It's pretty phenomenal. And we have an enormous following with that.
So very important question, Teddy. Last question of the night. What's your favorite sandwich?
On the bread.
Oh
yeah.
man.
And what type of bread? Because this is going to make or break if we trust you about all of our other beer questions.
Yeah, 1,000%. So we make a grinder, nice, just 3-4 Italian cured meats that are phenomenal, that we put on kind of whatever rustic sourdough we're cutting at that point in the day. Make a deli rye or marbled rye that is absolutely phenomenal. I enjoy some cold cuts, some capicola, some salami, things like that. We smoke our own pork loins and things like that as well. And so, toss all the meat, some cheese, some red onions, some mayo on there, and can't really go wrong.
You're on the call with two New Yorkers, even though Mike is on the other side of the country. He's a New Yorker.
Yeah.
And so we agree. We agree.
Yeah. Oh yeah. A grinder, it's hard to beat a grinder. And we're definitely not a New York spot by any means. And it's a little different, but give me a grinder any day of the week and I'll die happy.
I love it.
Yes, we do smoke meats, RJ, that just popped up. So we have a newer restaurant up in North Spokane that one of our chefs operates that is a barbecue. So our baker, Sean, and Jonathan, I think you said you are a Texan. So our baker, Sean, grew up in Mesquite. And our chef, Victor, who's up in North Spokane, grew up in Waco. So we got some Texas boys in in our place. So we have a Texas shrine at the grain shed, and it's pretty wonderful. But yeah, we have a barbecue restaurant up in North Spokane. Yeah, 2,400 miles. We got food for you at the end and beer. And we so we got a big ass smoker, smoke our own pork loins, and brisket, ribs, pulled pork, wings, kind of smoked salsa as well. Do the whole thing, and it's pretty great.
Fantastic.
That is definitely going to be
We are.
a road trip.
Yeah, we're
because
planning a road
that's,
trip here in the chat.
Come
Yeah.
to Spokane.
Yeah.
It's
No,
pretty awesome. Spokane's great. Come in the spring too, like May. If you
Uh-huh.
want, we can talk about the falls as well. I know that you guys are talking
Oh,
about
yeah, we were
second
talking
largest
about the
urban falls. Legitimately, there is a river that runs through the middle of downtown that is not a giant river, but when you get to about May, beginning middle of May, you get all of the runoff from all of the mountains that are around, which is
Right.
significant. Like there are, quite a bit. And they just are absolutely roaring. So the Spokane Falls are, and there are tons, hydroelectric dams throughout, but I mean, middle May, beginning of May, they are just filled to the brim. So it's a pretty amazing thing. And then the rest of the year, they're pretty mild, they're pretty mellow, but they are roaring, literally roaring through downtown.
Love it.
So
Pretty
everybody
cool.
heard, everyone that's on the chat, everyone that's listening to the podcast, May, we are all going to Grain Shed. We're going to get a grinder. We're going to get some barbecue, and then we're going to go see the falls. I feel like this should just happen. I'm looking forward to this because why not? As we are coming to the close, though, you brought us full circle, Teddy. You brought us to the falls that we brought in the beginning. You answered everyone's questions. You made everybody hungry. And so our last thing for you is there anything that you want to plug for yourself, for the grain shed, for the area, anything that you want to plug before we say see you later?
Spokane is kind of a little hidden gem of beer. There's some really, really phenomenal beer in Spokane. Our proximity to Yakima and the Palouse puts us in kind of a pretty nice little niche. I mean, you really have the two main ingredients of beer that are grown. I mean, Yakima's a 3-hour drive from me, like not even 2.5-hour drive. Like you're within 200 miles of beer growing territory all the way around. And it's pretty cool to be able to drive through fields of beer. Come to Spokane, come to the area. It's pretty dang cool. Spokane has an absolutely fantastic beer scene, both in quality, but also in just like, it is a very collaborative place, which is really awesome. There's some, competition piece to it, but for the most part, everybody just wants everybody else to succeed. And it's a pretty great place as far as that goes for the beer scene.
That's awesome. I mean, next time I'm on the West Coast, besides seeing Mike, I'm going to Spokane. Maybe we'll meet, as we mentioned, Mike, it's less than 1,000 miles. It's a day trip, right?
Day trip.
Easy.
Yeah, easy. For Jonathan, for Jonathan and RJ, it's 2,400 miles. So that's like a little bit, like that's a
2-day
weekend
trip.
2-day trip. Not quite a day trip. But no, Teddy, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your knowledge and everything, these fantastic beers. I know everybody is loving them. We're all gonna enjoy them. And then best of luck for everything that's to come. And I think this is the time that I hate to say this is the end, but I know everyone's planning a trip to Spokane. So this is the beginning. This is a definitely see you later kind of portion of the show. For all of our guests that are listening on the live stream and on the podcast, thank you so much for coming. Obviously, we do have the 12 Beers of Christmas still available. So go to shop.cbt.com or shop.citybrewtours.com and we will get that 12 Beers of Christmas. We will see you in literally next week, a couple weeks. We will also see you next month. As I mentioned in the beginning, we will only for the next couple months be having one live stream a month. So we will get that out to you we will do have another fantastic city coming your way. Little bit of a private one, but don't worry, it's closer to me, a little further from Mike. So, so you can throw in the comments, you can throw in on those chats. Let us know where you think we're coming from next month, and we're going to be enjoying some great beer here soon. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
Bye-bye.